As I made my way through the darkened alleyways, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building within me. This was the kind of work I excelled at, gathering information, making connections, and manipulating those around me to achieve my goals. And my goal, for now, was to learn more about the criminal underworld in this town. As I walked, I kept my senses alert for any sign of danger. I knew that as a vampire, I was a natural target for those who hunted my kind. But I was also confident in my abilities. My heightened senses, speed, and strength made me a formidable opponent, even in a world where magic and monsters were commonplace. As I approached the seedy tavern at the edge of town, I could hear the raucous laughter and drunken shouting spilling out from within. This was the kind of place where criminals and ne'er-do-wells gathered to plot their schemes and drown their sorrows. I slipped inside, my eyes quickly adjusting to the dim light. The smell of stale ale, sweat, and smoke filled my nostrils, and I felt a moment of revulsion. But I quickly pushed the feeling aside and focused on my goal. I scanned the room, looking for anyone who might be able to provide me with information. And then I saw him, a grizzled old man, sitting alone at a table in the corner. He wore a patch over one eye, and his face was lined with deep wrinkles. But there was a sharpness to his gaze that told me he was not to be underestimated. I approached him cautiously, taking care not to reveal my true nature. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice low and smooth. "Might I have a word with you?" The man turned to face me, his eyes darting up and down my figure. I could see the curiosity and suspicion in his gaze, and I knew I had to be careful. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone wary. "I'm new in town, and I'm looking for some information," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I was hoping you could help me." The man raised an eyebrow. "What kind of information?" "I'm interested in the criminal underworld here," I said. "I heard that there are some powerful figures operating in this town, and I was hoping to learn more about them." The man's expression darkened. "You're asking for trouble, stranger. The criminal element in this town doesn't take kindly to outsiders poking around." "I understand the risks," I said, trying to sound confident. "But I'm willing to take them. I have some unique skills that might be of use to those who are willing to work with me." The man studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "What kind of skills?" "I'm very good at keeping secrets," I said, giving him a small smile. "And I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, if necessary." The man seemed to consider this for a moment, then he nodded. "All right. I might be able to help you, but it won't be easy. You'll have to prove yourself first." "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," I said. The man nodded again. "All right. Meet me here tomorrow night, after dark. I'll see what I can do." I thanked him and turned to leave, feeling a sense of satisfaction. This was a good start. I had a feeling that things were about to get interesting. As I stepped out of the tavern, I scanned the street for any signs of trouble. The town was quiet, but I knew that the criminal underworld was always lurking in the shadows. I walked down the cobblestone road, my mind racing with thoughts of my next move. I needed to find a way to get closer to the criminal element, but I couldn't risk being detected. Suddenly, a commotion caught my attention. A group of rough-looking men were gathered around a young woman, harassing her. My instincts kicked in, and I knew that I had to act. I approached the group, keeping my head down to avoid the moonlight. "Leave her alone," I growled, my voice low and menacing. The men turned to face me, their eyes narrowing as they sized me up. "Who the hell are you?" one of them snarled. "Just passing through," I replied, my gaze locked on the young woman. "But I don't take kindly to bullies." The men hesitated, unsure of what to do. I took advantage of their momentary confusion and stepped forward, placing myself between them and the woman. "Get lost," I said, my voice hard as steel. "Before things get ugly." The men glared at me for a moment longer before turning and slinking away into the shadows. I watched them go, my hand instinctively going to the hilt of my sword. As I extended my hand towards the young woman, I couldn't help but notice how delicate she looked. Her fingers were trembling as she took my hand, and I could feel her fear radiating off of her in waves. I couldn't blame her for feeling that way. This was not a safe place for anyone, let alone a young woman. As she stood up, I could see that her clothes were dirty and torn in places. She was thin and looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Her hair was unkempt, and her face was streaked with dirt and tears. I knew that I couldn't leave her like this. She needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. "Are you hungry?" I asked her, knowing full well that I didn't need to eat. "I can take you somewhere to get something to eat." She looked up at me, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She didn't know me, and I couldn't blame her for being cautious. I had to choose my words carefully if I wanted to gain her trust. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you," I said softly, giving her a gentle smile. "I just want to help. You don't have to be afraid of me." After a moment of hesitation, she nodded, and I took her by the hand. We walked through the dark streets of the town, avoiding the main roads and sticking to the shadows. I knew this place well and had a few contacts here that could help us. As we walked, I made sure to maintain a reassuring presence, speaking softly to her and asking her about herself. I learned that her name was Isabella, and she was new to the town, having just arrived a few days ago. She was looking for work and had been out searching when the group of men had cornered her. We finally arrived at a small, run-down inn on the outskirts of the town. It wasn't much, but it was the perfect place to lay low and gather information. I led the young woman inside and motioned for her to take a seat at one of the tables. I could see the fear in Isabella's eyes slowly being replaced with a sense of trust as we spoke. I explained that I had some contacts in the town who could help us and that we needed to lay low for a while. She seemed hesitant at first, but I could tell that she was more afraid of being alone than of being with me. As I approached the innkeeper, a gruff-looking man with a bushy beard, he eyed me suspiciously. I could tell he didn't trust me, but that was nothing new. I had dealt with his type before. "What can I get you?" he grunted. "Just a room for the night," I replied, handing him a few silver coins. "And some food for my friend here." The innkeeper grunted again and tossed me a key, then disappeared into the back room. I led Isabella up the creaky stairs to a small room at the end of the hall. It was sparsely furnished, with just a single bed and a small table, but it would serve our purposes. I turned to her. "You can rest here for a while. I need to go out and gather some information. I'll be back soon." She nodded, looking grateful but also a little uncertain. I gave her a reassuring smile and left the room, closing the door softly behind me. As I descended the stairs and made my way back into the town, I kept my senses sharp. I could hear the whispers and mutterings of the townsfolk, but most of them were too quiet for me to make out. I needed to get closer. I made my way to a dark alleyway where I knew some of the town's less savory characters liked to congregate. As I approached, I could hear the low murmur of voices. I slipped into the shadows and listened. At first, I couldn't make out much. The voices were too quiet, too muffled. But then one voice rose above the others, and I strained to hear what was being said. "And I'm telling you, the guild is behind it all. They're the ones pulling the strings." The guild. I had heard of them before. A shadowy organization that controlled much of the criminal underworld in this part of the world. If they were involved in whatever was happening here, things were even worse than I had thought. I knew that if I was going to get to the bottom of things, I needed to earn the trust of the guild. It wouldn't be easy, but I was confident in my abilities. I left Isabella in the room and made my way to the seedier part of town, where I knew the guild had its base of operations. It didn't take long for me to find someone who knew someone who could get me in touch with the right people. A few well-placed words and a small bribe were all it took, and soon I was sitting across from a man named Remy, one of the guild's lower-ranking members. Remy was a rough-looking man with a scar running down the side of his face. He eyed me suspiciously as I approached, but I could tell he was intrigued by me. I introduced myself as a traveler looking for work, and he seemed to believe me. The first job we worked on together was a simple heist. We were tasked with stealing a valuable necklace from a wealthy merchant's house on the outskirts of town. Remy had acquired a map of the merchant's estate and had a plan in place. As we approached the house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. It had been a long time since I had been involved in something like this, and my vampire senses were heightened by the thrill of the moment. Remy had divided us into teams, and I was paired with a wiry man named Jax. Jax was quick on his feet and had a sly sense of humor that I found amusing. We quickly made our way around the back of the house, avoiding the guard dogs and the patrolling guards. As I approached the door, I could feel the magic emanating from the alarm system. It was an intricate spell, one that would require a great deal of skill to disarm. Jax and I had been tasked with disabling the alarm and getting inside the house. I focused my attention on the spell, analyzing its structure and searching for any weaknesses. After a few moments of intense concentration, I spotted a flaw in the spell's design. It was a subtle flaw, one that would have been easy to miss. But to someone with my level of experience, it was as clear as day. I gestured for Jax to stand back as I reached out and touched the door. I closed my eyes and muttered a few incantations under my breath, then twisted my hand in a complex gesture. There was a faint crackling sound, and I could feel the magic of the alarm system unraveling beneath my touch. A moment later, the door swung open with a soft creak, revealing the dimly lit interior of the house. Jax and I slipped inside, moving quickly and quietly. We made our way through the darkened hallways, searching for the object we had been sent to retrieve. As we searched, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building within me. This was the kind of work I was born to do, sneaking around in the shadows, outwitting my opponents, and taking what I wanted. After a few tense moments, we found what we were looking for, a small, ornate box sitting on a table in one of the back rooms. Jax and I exchanged a quick glance, then I reached out and grabbed the box, tucking it carefully into my satchel. We slipped out of the house and vanished into the night, our mission accomplished. As we made our way back to the rendezvous point, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. We had pulled off the heist flawlessly, and no one had been hurt. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. As we met up with Remy and the others, he congratulated us on a job well done. He handed out our cut of the loot, a small pouch of gold coins, and we went our separate ways. I returned to the inn where I had left Isabella, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I knew that we were one step closer to getting the information we needed to uncover the mystery behind the recent events in the town. Isabella was waiting for me when I returned. She looked up as I entered the room, a small smile playing across her lips. "How did it go?" she asked. I couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth at her concern. "It went well," I replied, setting the pouch of coins down on the table. "We completed the job without any problems." Isabella's eyes widened as she looked at the pouch of coins. "That's a lot of money," she said, her voice filled with wonder. I shrugged. "It's not much. Just enough to keep us going for a little while longer." As the night wore on, we talked about our pasts and our hopes for the future. Isabella told me about her family, how she had been forced to leave them behind when she came to the town in search of work. I listened intently, feeling a sense of kinship with her. It was strange, feeling this connection to someone. As a vampire, I had always been alone, a creature of the night. But something about Isabella's presence made me feel more human, more alive.